Diversity and inclusion are finally getting the attention they deserve. But now that we're finally paying attention, are we approaching diversity and inclusion in the right way? Often when we talk about diversity and inclusion, or diversity, equity, inclusion, or even equity, diversity, and inclusion, we often use language to identify their order of importance. Too often it's thought of as a sequence of events that needs to be addressed in order. Diversity first, then equity, then inclusion. Or even diversity first, then equity, which will create inclusion. But what if I told you that thinking of diversity and inclusion from this perspective is actually adding to the struggle and limiting the success of your D&I or DEI efforts? Diversity is about the who we recruit, who we promote, who we select, and who is in a position to represent. Inclusion is about the how we make people feel welcome, how we create a safe place to speak up, and how we make people feel like they belong. This is a very important distinction to make. The who are very important, but starting with who is not the sustainable place to begin. Diversity efforts mainly happen in the hiring process and are often measured by how many people fit into what categories, where inclusion efforts are about everything that happens after someone is hired. It's about how they will be treated within their team, how the workplace culture will make them feel, how long they will be able to be successful and productive in their work. Inclusion is the environment that people invited by diversity are welcomed into. So the most logical place to start is to create the right environment and culture so those invited to be a part of it are able to be successful. The idea of starting your D&I efforts with inclusion is starting to gain more and more prominence. As American activist Verna Myers has aptly put it, diversity is being invited to the party, inclusion is being asked to dance. Her core message is that inclusion is the necessary precursor to diversity. It's not about counting how many people in underrepresented groups you employ. It's about cultivating the right organizational culture. Khalil Smith from the Neuro Leadership Institute also provides some fitting sentiments that support starting with inclusion. This ensures that a company is tending to their soil, the culture, before trying to plant new flowers, the talent. He also aptly said that diversity is counting heads and inclusion is making heads count. Much of the support around starting with inclusion centers on the principles of talent attraction versus talent retention. A lot of time and effort can be spent recruiting and ultimately hiring the right people. But if the environment that they are hired into doesn't allow them to feel like they belong and be successful, they're not going to stick around. Let's look at a quick example. Meet Simone. She was recently hired as a real estate lawyer at a large law firm. After over a month of interviews, assessments, and panel meetings, she was excited to accept a job at a firm that had gone to such lengths to prioritize a fair and accessible recruitment process. Once she settled into her new job, she was surprised that the workplace culture she had come to expect from the recruitment process was not as welcoming and inclusive as she had hoped. Sure, everyone was friendly and helpful to her, but when she would bring forth ideas about how she could work better or suggest improvements to the overall workflow, she would often hear phrases like, well, if we did that for one, we'd have to do that for everyone. Or, that's not how we do things here. And you don't want to rock the boat. Simone started to feel like the recruitment committee that had hired her had let her down by inflating her expectations. Yes, the job was exactly like what they said it would be, and everyone was friendly. But the culture made her feel like she didn't really belong, and that she wasn't welcome to speak up or share her ideas and needs. This gap between what she thought the work environment would be and what it actually was really disappointed her, making her feel like she was set up to fail. This caused Simone to become disengaged from her work and withdraw from her coworkers. And after only 3 months in the job, she started to look for work elsewhere. This situation starts with a common attitude that many people feel when they start a new job, whether they're from a traditionally underrepresented community or not. We often start with excitement and enthusiasm for new opportunities and become disengaged when expectations are not matched with reality. Too often, for those that are from underrepresented groups, this disenfranchisement is amplified and the negative effects are compounded. This brings us to another great statement by Khalil Smith. Diversity without inclusion is a revolving door of talent. To be clear, diversity efforts need to start with inclusion to create a workplace where people feel safe to speak up and that they actually belong.